Hello and welcome to episode 23 of Triumph Beyond Trauma. I am beyond thrilled that you are spending your incredibly valuable time listening to this podcast and hopefully always getting something out of the amazing conversations I'm having with my guests. There's a beautiful quote by Marcus Aurelius: "If your well-being matters, be your own savior while you can." And it's been mentioned a few times actually on the podcast by different guests, and I think the reason for that is pretty simple. In relation to mental health or mental wellness, there's only so much that others can do for you. The rest really is up to you. You have to put in every single day. And of course, there's going to be the days where you just can't. I get it. And it's totally okay and normal. But the most important thing is to wake up tomorrow, realize that this day is a gift and that you're going to do something to be your own savior. Maybe it's a shower. Maybe it's a walk with the kids. Maybe it's listening to John Farnham, You're the Voice with old mates. Maybe it's heading over to my website, tacticalyogaaustralia.com, and enrolling in my program, the First Responder Mental Wellness Method. The program was created with the intention of empowering first responders, veterans, and frontline workers to embrace their mental health and take positive action to be their own saviors. To learn about how our jobs impact our mental health and how mind, body, breath techniques can make the most profound impact on your journey. It's literally changed my life and is changing the lives of those that are already enrolled. And I want the same for you. So head on over to tacticalyogaaustralia.com and have a look and see what it's all about. Today, I am talking with the wonderful Sarah Ashcroft. Sarah is a retired New South Wales police sergeant, and Sarah is absolutely demonstrating what it is to be your own saviour, creating a colouring book for emergency and by hosting the brand sparkly new Emergency podcast. I cannot wait for you guys to take a listen, so let's get into it. Welcome to Triumph Beyond Trauma, the podcast that explores journeys of resilience and hope. I'm Rosie Skene, a yoga and breathwork teacher and founder of Tactical Yoga Australia. As a former soldier's wife, mum to 3 beautiful kids and a medically retired New South Wales police officer with PTSD, I understand the challenges of navigating mental health in the first responder and veteran community. Join us for incredible stories from individuals who've confronted the depths of mental illness and discovered their path to happiness and purpose, as well as solo episodes and expert discussions. Together, we'll uncover the tools to help you navigate your journey toward a brighter, more fulfilling life. Whether you're looking for helpful insights, practical tips, or just a friendly reminder that you're not alone, Triumph Beyond Trauma has got your back. You matter, and your journey to a happier, more meaningful life starts right here. Welcome to Triumph Beyond Trauma, Sarah. It's so good to have you here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Nice to meet you in person, finally.
Yeah, I know. I've seen you a couple of times on the little emergency group chat, but not one-on-one. So it's nice.
Yeah, good to put a face to the name.
Yeah, for sure. So usually I just start this podcast with just telling us a little bit about yourself and how you come to join the police force.
Yeah, well, I'm 46 at the moment, live in southwest Sydney. I joined the cops when I was 18, pretty much straight out of school, but I did try my hand at becoming a marine biologist for a little while there. I had some weird dream of being a dolphin trainer like everybody does.
I think that was like when we were kids, that was like the job, wasn't it?
I
A marine
know.
biologist. I don't know why.
Yeah, well, I was mad into scuba diving, so
Ah.
yeah, I always wanted to be a cop, but then for some reason I got pretty decent marks in HSC and thought, oh God, maybe I better go to uni because, that's the dumb thing. So yeah, 6 weeks into a science degree and I hadn't attended many of the lectures and we had an exam coming up where we were going to have to kill a rat and cut it open for this prac exam. So I was like, no, I'm tapping out. I'm going
Ew.
back to cops. So yeah, joined when I was 18 and yeah, 26 years later, here we are.
Yeah, wow. How'd you find it from going from university and doing that to, going to Goulburn and joining the cops?
Well, I'd never worked before, so I was pretty excited to be earning money because
Yeah.
that was prep back then. I think we used to get like $900 a fortnight.
Yeah, right.
I'd never worked, and I'd never lived out of home. So living down at Goulburn and earning money, like I thought I was loaded and was living my best life down there.
Yeah, absolutely. So where'd you go from Goulburn?
Um, Stupidly, I put in for Bankstown because I grew up around there and, of course, got it.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, so straight to Bankstown.
And did you stay there for very long, or did you move around a bit, or how was your career?
Yeah, all Sydney, mostly Bankstown, sadly. I stayed there for about 13 years or so and then transferred to Macquarie Fields, but I only did 3 years there. I found it pretty boring and then went back to the PTC, the Police Transport Command,
Yeah.
in the, plainclothes tag unit there, which was based out of Bankstown, for another 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
How did you go with your career? Like you said, you went to PTC and did some plainclothes stuff there. Did you move around a bit, and even though you're in Bankstown for so long, or were you
Yeah.
happy to stay in GDs?
I did a little bit of everything. I did probably half GDs, then half proactive. We started the drug unit in Bankstown, which was based out of the detective's office, but I never did my designation or anything like that. I did a little secondment at the gang squad. I hated that. It was so boring. I just hated like not being out on the road and
Yeah.
interacting with people. Came back and got my sergeant's job in the proactive team, and then yeah, a little bit more JDs at Macquarie Fields, and then back to proactive. I just really like that proactive style, like plain clothes and getting out there and hunting the crooks, as we used to say.
Yeah, I know. I enjoyed, like, I was a country cop, so not as busy as in the city, but I really enjoyed that proactive side of policing as well. Going out to find your own trouble and that sort of thing. So I found that like a lot of fun. I think you can have a lot more fun doing that than just being reactive all the time.
Yeah, I mean, JDs is fun and it's a lot more exciting. You get to go to all the good jobs, but yeah, there's something about like getting a problem, I suppose, like a crime problem and having to solve it. And yeah, can be satisfying.
So you said you did 26 years.
Yeah, in the end.
Yeah, that's probably going to be unheard of soon that people do
Mm.
that long in the cops.
Well, there's still people there that were there when I started. Yeah, I don't know how they're doing it, but
I, I don't know either.
mm,
Um, So what happened for you? How did you like I've listened to a couple of the podcast episodes now that you're doing with emergency, and we'll get to that a little bit later. But one of the episodes I listened to was how you started to really learn a lot about PTSD
yeah,
and how you were researching that. But I was just wanting to know how that came all about for you. I know for me, my PTSD is cumulative, so there wasn't one big bang that sort of set me off. I think it was just a culmination of a lot, and then like most people, have that straw that broke the camel's back, or that last drop of water in the bucket, or whatever analogy you want to use. That was me.
yeah.
So I'm really interested in how that comes about for other people. So how did it come about for you?
Pretty much the same, I'd say. I did have a couple of sort of major jobs really early on. I spent my 20th birthday at a double murder where my partner and I were almost killed. Um, and for some reason, that job really stuck with me. I think the fact that it was on my birthday really pissed
Yeah,
me off.
it would stick with you. Yep.
Yeah. And I did get some help after that one, like privately, without even knowing what PTSD was back then. But then obviously, you carry on and yeah, definitely accumulated a lot more jobs after that. And yeah, I think looking back in hindsight, it's probably a reason why I went to the Police Transport Command. I think in one way I was avoiding general duties. And even like the plainclothes work that we used to do, I'd find myself steering the team towards surveillance and things like that rather than just hitting the crooks up, And so I think I knew for a while that something was going on. But yeah, it wasn't until that one day, and no specific job had happened, in the months leading up to it, but that just that one day I was due to go to work. My normal routine, because I started at 12 o'clock, was to go to the gym after I dropped the kids off at school and then go straight from the gym to work. And this one day I had my lunch packed, I had everything, had my work bag with me, dropped the kids off at school, and I was all sorted to go to the gym. And I just got back in the car from the kids and just started crying. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, there was nothing interesting about that shift. Nothing had happened. It was just, I just couldn't do it. I just could not drive to work. So, yeah, that was the end of it for me. And I really don't know why.
And you didn't go that day?
No, I rang my best mate who I had been working with and just said to her, "Mate, this is what's going on." And she's like, "Oh, buddy, I think it's time. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
you can't go." So, yeah, I never went back.
Yeah, wow, that's the same, like, almost the same for me. I started crying and had
Yeah,
never, ever done that
yeah,
before about work, and
yeah.
I cried at work when I was talking to someone, a victim and their mum,
No,
and I was like, "Oof, I'm so sorry. This has never happened to me before. I don't know what's going on. I'll be back in a minute." But then
yeah,
I obviously kept going back, and then I started the night before, and then on the way to work, and then on the
yeah,
way home from work, and I was just like, "What the hell?"
yeah.
Um, yeah, it's incredible how that comes out, isn't it?
So
In your
weird.
body.
Yeah, like in the end, I think you can convince yourself in your mind. You can sort of try and override your feelings, but yeah, like they say, the body keeps the score, and in the end, it just doesn't let you carry on.
No, it
Bizarre.
absolutely doesn't. It's like, "No, we're done." Like,
Yeah,
"You're not listening to me."
yeah. I don't care what you say. You're not going to work.
So what'd you do from there after you didn't go back, obviously? How did you start that process of finding help for yourself?
I found it really hard. Like, just I went to my GP, who I'd had my family GP for years, and I was shocked. He literally said to me, "Oh, I can't help you. It's too much paperwork.
Yeah.
I don't do work cover."
Yeah.
And this, I'd waited a week for this appointment because trying to get a GP appointment,
Mhm.
and yeah, look, God, that really took me back. I was so upset, and yeah, and anyway, I just had to shop around for a GP, and the next one I found was terrible, and all he wanted to talk about was how he couldn't grasp how my kids had 2 mums, and he was like
Goodness.
he just
Oh,
wanted to ask about who their father was and all that stuff.
what are the
Oh
logistics
my
of that? Yeah.
god, what is going on? Anyway, finally, thankfully, I had a friend who had gone off, a few months earlier, and he directed me to a decent one and a good psychologist, thank God, and, yeah, finally got my team together, but took some effort.
Yeah. Isn't that incredible? Again, I had a similar experience. I was in coughs and then we moved to Adelaide. So I had to get like interstate
Oh,
work cover situation. And the first doctor I went to, even as I started talking about it, I could see her little eyes just like bouncing around. She's quite young. And I was like, I don't think this is going to work because I need someone to take me on long term. This is not
yeah,
like a one and done situation. And I was so lucky that the next one I found down there, she had some experience and she was so lovely and sort of really understood everything, and just having a family as well as having a mental health diagnosis.
yeah,
So she understood that whole situation that I was in. And I was so thankful for that. But that other one,
yeah,
like I totally understand your doctor saying, "Oh, this is too much for me." Like I'll just prescribe some medicine, like I don't do that. I was talking to Adam Bloom recently, and he said it took him 3 years to find the people that he needed to help him move through his depression.
yeah, I mean, it's such a personal thing, and you've really got to click with the person. I went through, I think, 4 psychologists before I found the one that I'm with now, and my previous one was fantastic, but it was a more of a logistical distance thing, but yeah, like, the first 2, like you said, they're just one was just more interested in filling out return to work plans and telling me his war stories, and yeah, it's just hard, like, to find someone who's willing to do work cover for a start and
Yeah,
who knows about trauma. Yeah, it's a challenge.
it
Once you
really,
weird, you switch.
yeah. I was literally talking to a friend yesterday who said that he went to a GP and all they wanted to hear was war stories.
Yeah,
And they were just like, "Oh, that's interesting." Like, "Oh, that's an interesting job." He's like, "Oh, just help me, please." I don't want to talk to you about this.
well,
Oh,
this first psychologist I had used to be, in New York, and so he just wanted to tell me about firefighters that he'd treated after the Twin Towers. I'm like, that's obviously a tragic circumstance, but that's not helping me.
no, I don't need that trauma as well as my own trauma. Thanks so much.
Look, I get it. They win. That was horrible, but that's not a competition.
No, that's right.
Mm.
Oh my gosh. So you've got your team together now.
Mm,
How did you go? You had kids, you said, at that stage as well? Because you
yeah.
haven't been out very long, have you? It's quite recent.
Yeah, officially since November last year, so
Okay. Yeah. Wow. So yeah, that's not long at all. So
yeah.
how is that going for you at home with your family?
Um, Not bad, they've finally they're 12 and 10, so,
Oh, okay.
and I've always been pretty honest with them about it. I haven't sort of hidden it or, glazed over it, so they're pretty good. They understand what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. They're good ages, I think, because you can sort of explain it to them in a way that they're gonna,
Yeah,
understand that,
yeah,
how you deal with situations sometimes might be a bit different, I guess.
yeah. I think
Yeah.
the only, probably negative for them is their other mum is a cop as well.
Oh, okay.
So they have that, two-edged sword, like, oh, now they're a bit worried about her. But then
Mhm.
also, well, she's fine. She still goes to work, so why can't you go to work?
That would be hard for the kids, I think, to get around their head around that.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I wanted to talk to you about being your own savior because I think you're doing this really well. I think that from what I've heard from the podcast and what I've seen, in those little snippets of emergency, um, that you're really doing things like you're very active in doing things that are good for you. And I just want to know, like, what made you start doing things? Because for me, it was a bit of a trickle. Sort of, I did this little 1% things. I started doing this, and then I added on this. So how has that come about for you? Like, a podcast is a pretty huge undertaking, and it's a lot of learning. And I don't think I could have done it as early as what you have in your journey.
Yeah. I don't think I quite knew what I was taking on, to be
Yeah.
fair.
And I think that's probably a good thing, hey, because if you did, you're like, oh, I'm not doing that.
Bugger. No, you're right. I think it's definitely been a slow progress and, um, it's not all smooth sailing. Like, some days I can't do it and I just gotta give myself that space to have the time off, but yeah, I think, for me, it started with the colouring book that we made for emergency. I was at doing an inpatient program down at South Coast Private Hospital, and there was a ex-veteran there who was into these ink drawings. I don't know if you can see, but he did that, big black and white one on the wall. It's amazing, right? These 3D intricate drawings.
Yeah.
He was doing it while we were in there, and he was like, "Oh, it's so easy, like, I'll show you some patterns." So anyway, he started teaching us all these little patterns that you can draw, and so we'd all just sit around the table, just chatting and drinking tea, and as you do in those places,
Yeah.
and drawing. And then when we got out of hospital, we sort of had this WhatsApp group, and we keep doing our drawings and sending them to each other. And one day, one of the girls was like, "Oh, we should make a coloring book for emergency and try and raise some funds for them." And so we approached the girls, and they got it printed. And yeah, just to see that sort of come to light and feel like you're sort of part of a team again. Like,
Yeah.
you really miss that, don't you, when you leave
Yeah.
the so just to be sort of part of a group and accomplish something, and it just felt really good to be giving back. Um, and then obviously just getting more involved with Emerge and just trying to help those girls because they're doing an amazing job.
Yeah. They're crazy.
Yeah.
I've seen Alana a few times, and every time I see her, I'm like, "You guys are mad, the amount of work that you're doing." Like, and I'm so glad that they have set up a little system with volunteers now because they need the help.
Yeah, and they're not getting paid. They're doing it all off their own bat, and they're working like more than a full-time job. Like, it's
Yeah.
ridiculous. And
Um,
yeah, I used to work with Alana at Bankstown, so I knew her previous. And yeah, just, I mean, anything that I can do to help them, within my own capabilities, I'm happy to do. But yeah, and then I guess with the podcast, it just sort of came about because the girls were telling me that they had previously been booked for a bunch of education sessions at police stations, where they would talked about lived experience and recognizing the symptoms of PTSD and stuff like that. But then all of a sudden they started getting cancelled, and feedback from the HR command was that it was coming from higher up. Obviously, it was having a bit of a flow on effect of people recognizing. And
I don't think they like that.
No. Um, so yeah, it just pissed me off a little bit, to be honest. And I
Yeah.
thought, well, how can we get this information out to the people who need it? And yeah, I just thought, oh, podcast. Like, no one can stop them listening to a podcast.
No, that's exactly right.
Yeah. So that's how that happened.
Oh, that's so good. And you're a few episodes in now. One of the episodes that I really liked, and I actually shared it with a friend yesterday, was the one, I can't remember their names, but the psychologist and the psychiatrist who've opened up a clinic together
Yeah.
down, is it Wollongong way?
Yeah. The Psych
Yeah.
Collective, Dr. Alan, Jeb Sogar. Yeah.
Yeah, that was an amazing episode, and I think that is something that I would have loved to have listened to really early on.
Mm.
So yeah, great work with that one because it was so informative, but incredibly down to earth and easy to understand.
Yeah. They're
Um,
amazing, aren't they? They're
yeah,
so, yeah. When I first went off and I was looking up information and came across their channel on YouTube, and they've got a video that they did years ago called the damn wall model. And
nice.
it's kind of like your bucket sort of analogy, but it's a damn wall.
Mm,
It's the first time that I really understood what accumulative trauma was. And just the way they explain it, so simple. Yeah, so I guess I've always been a bit of a fangirl of them and had the pleasure of meeting them when I was an inpatient down there. And so
ah,
I knew it would be helpful for people. And, I wish I'd have had it as well.
yeah, I'm gonna link to that one in the show notes because I think it's so important for people to have those little understandings just in a way that's so simple. Like you're like, oh, of course. Like, and the way they explain the damn wall as a that's your resilience sort of
Mm,
shield, I guess. And I was
yeah,
like, yeah, that's such a great way to explain it
yeah.
because once it starts tipping over or cracking, like, yeah, she's hard to come back from.
Yeah, and it kind of explains what you and I were just talking about, where you don't really know what the straw was broke the camel back, but yeah, and then it just all comes flooding in. It's just a perfect way of explaining it.
Yeah, and I think that also, especially I'm really big on increasing mental health literacy with first responders because I think we have this thing that unless you've been to the most horrendous of incidents, you're not worthy of
Mm,
having PTSD. And I know a lot of veterans are the same. I didn't do a tour. Who am I to have that have any trauma? I think we feel a lot of guilt or even shame, I guess, with that. But yeah, the cumulative trauma, I was like, "Oh, so that's a thing. Well, that would make sense." Yeah, I've seen it over this many years. There's been a few things that have
yeah,
built that.
yeah, and then I had someone even explain to me once, I think it was another psychologist, that, you might not even have gone to any traumatic jobs, but just being out on the street in uniform and being on guard and feeling threatened just simply because you are a cop,
Mm,
it's trauma in itself. But,
100%. You're not the most
well,
liked people in the world.
yeah, I mean, I guess true. You're basically a walking target for the 12 hours of your shift. And I'm like, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and I think that uniform really dehumanizes you as well in the eyes of, I guess, not the whole public, but, the people that don't generally like police. You're not actually a mum or a wife or a husband, a
Mm,
father, a brother or sister. You're just a person in a blue uniform that they have decided that they don't like. So it's really, I guess, confronting as well, isn't it?
yeah.
That whole thing.
Mhm. Yeah, we all walk around feeling vulnerable, but it's for good reason, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
So with your journey, I like to call it a journey because I don't think that it really ever ends. I think you feel better and I think you're more capable of doing things each and every day if you do put in that work and effort. So I always refer to it as a journey. So in your journey, what are you doing consistently, I guess, to help yourself in your recovery?
Well, recently, I suppose, because I've been taking a lot on, I've sort of had to make myself a mental checklist. So each day I say to myself, all right, the main thing is look after your physical health. So, get out of bed, have a shower, brush your teeth, do all those things. They've got to be number one.
Yeah.
Do your doctor's appointments, do your psychology appointments, and then number two, take care of your family. Just prioritizing, I guess, because I was starting to sort of put the podcast and things first.
Yeah.
Just getting back to like, yeah, taking care of yourself first from sort of like a mindfulness sort of thing. I try to do a bit of painting or artwork each day if I have time. Um, Yeah, just don't know, just plugging along really.
I think it's so important though to acknowledge that getting out of bed and brushing your teeth and having a shower, those things are so important
Yeah.
because a lot of us don't do that every day. A lot of people need to be
Yeah.
reminded, have you had a shower? I'm like, oh, actually, no, it might have been a couple of days. Yeah, I really should do that. So to be able to consistently do those things is
Mm.
so good for your recovery and knowing that you've done it and you feel good about yourself. And then you are able to show up for your family.
Yeah,
You've
exactly.
done the things for yourself.
Yeah, and I joined a gym a few years ago, even while I was still working, and it's like a group fitness type situation. So you've got to book in for the class sort of in advance. So I do that every morning at 9:30, and it just gives me something to get up for
Yeah.
in a routine. Like I have to be ready by 9 to get there on time, and if you cancel, you've let people down. So yeah, I think just prioritizing exercise and your own physical well-being first, and then fit in other things if you can do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
True.
Acknowledging your own capacity is pretty huge, hey? And recognizing when things are, okay, I need to pull back a little bit now.
Yeah,
Mm.
exactly. Yeah, like I'm the kind of person who's like, yeah, I'll do that. I can do that. I'll help with that. And yeah, you've really got a reality check and you can't do as much as you used to. And sometimes you have to say no and put yourself first.
Yeah, I think as first responders, we are a little bit adverse to saying no,
Mm.
especially when it's involving other people and trying to help them.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely something that I've struggled with over the years, and I'm getting better at putting some boundaries in now, because you just can't take on too much because one step forward and four steps back, unfortunately, and you really got to manage your own energy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's hard because you want to do what you used to do.
yeah, yeah. It's definitely like I said, it's definitely a journey, and I think over the years, I think it's been 7 years for me now in my journey since I was first diagnosed, and you gradually can do more things and you have more capacity, but still, like reading a whole book, that takes a while for me. Like where I used to be able to zip through them.
Yeah.
And there's those little things that I used to do that I just probably won't ever be able to do at the capacity that I used to do before. Um,
Mm.
so it's important to really think about that and acknowledge it and go, and then what happens afterwards, when you have taken on too much and yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. I'll go and help the girls like with a merge, do like a coffee van situation. And I'm like, yeah, this is good. It's only a couple of hours and you're not doing anything strenuous. But then for the rest of the day and the whole next day, you're exhausted.
Yes.
Takes so much out of you. I'm
Yeah.
like, ridiculous. I used to be a cop. Like,
Still do
you're up
12 hours.
after coffees. Yeah. Mm.
It's so true. What do you think's had the greatest impact on your recovery process so far, do you think?
Well, probably couldn't really separate exercise with the therapy that I've received, I suppose. For me, I'd say exercise, like
Yeah.
just that gym. Um, I just find it so beneficial just to have that hour a day of just, you can't think about anything else when you're in that moment. All you can do is breathe, count the reps that you're doing. There's no time to think about anything or dwell on anything. And then just obviously the chemical rush that you get after it is just amazing. The endorphins. Um, so I'd say exercise, and then obviously I've been lucky enough to do the inpatient programs, which it's just a huge amount of therapy condensed into such a short time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think you're right, with the exercise and what we're talking about, like that Body Keeps the Score, Bessel van der Kolk's book.
yeah,
Um, it's a way of processing the trauma, isn't it, really? Because you're just removing that energy with if you're weightlifting or like I do yoga and weightlifting as well, but, um and the breathing, I think, like you said, you don't have to think about anything else. So you're just
yeah,
thinking about that actual thing at that time. There's no time to be concerned with what's happened or be anxious about anything that might happen in the future. You're in that moment. I think it's so, um, profound really in
Yeah.
recovery.
Yeah, exactly. And you might not feel like it at the time. Like some days I really struggle to get in, like I'll be sitting in the car out the front going like, come on, Sarah, just walk in the door. And a few times I've gone home, I have to admit. But
Yeah.
if you can drag yourself in the door, like within 2 or 3 minutes of moving your body, you're like, yeah, it just feels so good. And you just get into it and just improves your whole mood, I find, for that whole day.
Yeah, absolutely. What's your favorite episode that so far that you've recorded on the emergency pod, and why?
Well, I probably would have said the Sight Collective one.
So
Um,
good.
but another one I really enjoyed was the one with Gillian Moore. Um, she was a friend of mine who we worked together way back in the day, and just to hear her story, she um, was involved in a car accident at work and rolled down this cliff. And anyway, she ended up with complex regional pain syndrome and had to eventually, after 6 years, have her arm amputated. And but she's just such an inspirational
Yeah.
using and she now does all these art therapy classes and she does welding and, she's just her attitude is just inspiring. And so it was really good to just catch up with her and put her story out there because I think it's just such a great example of resilience, like, and just having that attitude of finding a way to do it. I remember I asked her what's something she'd done recently that brought her joy, and she said she'd changed the drive chain or something on her ride-on lawnmower. And, like, for a normal able-bodied person, that'd be like, "Yeah, so?" But she's got one arm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, wow. But, yeah, it was a nice perspective.
I'd
And I like
I'd be proud of myself if I could do that. I don't even know what
I couldn't bet I couldn't even drive a ride-on lawnmower.
but absolutely, like, I find people just phenomenal, just humans and what our capabilities are
Mm,
in the face of adversity. Like, it's incredible what we can achieve, I think.
I know, there's so many cool stories out there.
Yeah, yeah. That's why I like doing this podcast so much because I do it for the people, but I get this, like, great personal joy out of talking to people and learning their stories and how they're overcoming challenges in their life, and,
Yeah.
it's yeah, it's amazing.
No, it's like therapy, isn't it? Like,
Oh, yeah.
talking to all these cool people.
Yeah, community therapy.
Exactly.
I finish and I try and finish every time with a piece of advice or, a little tidbit or a little quote or something, that you wanna share maybe with other people that might be having a tough time and, just want something to lift them up a little bit. Have you got anything for them?
Um, I think connection is the most important thing. I think if you can find a friend or a group or a community organization that you can connect with, could be a gym, could be an emergency, pubs, just connecting with people on a regular basis. And yeah, you don't have to do this alone. And there's plenty of people out there that can help you along the way. I think, yeah, that'd be my biggest tip. Find a group to connect with.
Yeah, that's such great advice because it can be incredibly lonely, right?
Yeah. And we miss that. That was such a part of our careers,
Yeah. And
connection, that family, but you can find it elsewhere. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to link to all the emergency stuff in your podcast in the show notes. So if anyone fits within the criteria of emergency, they can go and jump in and become a member because it's an amazing resource. And like you said, the girls, Pia and Alana, are doing
Mm.
incredible things with it. And it's so nice to see that.
Yeah. So good.
Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been such a joy to have you on and meet you finally properly in person.
Yeah. You too. Thanks for having me.
I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. If you have, make sure to hit subscribe so you never miss any new ones. We release fresh content every Tuesday. And while you're there, take a moment to leave us a review. I would genuinely appreciate your thoughts. Don't forget to connect with me on Instagram and Facebook at Tactical Yoga Australia and share this episode with your friends, family, and workmates to spread inspiration. Your support means the world. My name is Rosie Skene. Join me again next week for another empowering and positive episode of Triumph Beyond Trauma. Until then, be kind to your mind and trust in the magic of your consistent and positive efforts. Triumph beyond your trauma is closer than you think. Have the best week.